The alien outpost on Zephyria 9 was a marvel of galactic engineering, a sprawling complex of sleek, silver domes and towering spires that gleamed under the planet's pale blue sun. It was home to a diverse team of researchers, reptilian Zalaxians, insectoid KRYLL, and avian Quarians, each species contributing their unique expertise to the study of Zephyria 9's volatile ecosystem. But for all their technological prowess, the outpost was a fragile bubble in a world that seemed determined to crush it. The planet's weather was unpredictable, its storms violent enough to strip the paint from reinforced alloy. The wildlife was worse. Predators with razor-sharp claws and venomous spines lurked in the dense, bioluminescent forests that surrounded the outpost. And then there were the quakes, subtle tremors that rattled the ground at random intervals, a constant reminder that the planet itself was alive and restless. Alex Carter stepped off the shuttle and into the chaos. The human engineer was tall and wiry, with a mop of dark hair that refused to stay flat and a pair of sharp, observant eyes that missed nothing. His arrival was met with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The Zalaxians, with their scaled skin and slit-pupiled eyes, regarded him with cool detachment. The KRYLL, their chitinous bodies clicking softly as they moved, seemed indifferent. The Quarians, their feathers ruffling in the planet's thin air, exchanged low, melodic chirps that might have been laughter. Alex didn't need a translator to know what they were thinking. What can a human possibly contribute here? The outpost's director, a Zalaxian named VRYNN, greeted Alex with a curt nod. "Welcome to Zephyria 9, VRYNN said, his voice a low hiss. "I trust you've read the briefing materials. This is not a place for improvisation. We follow protocols here. Strict protocols." Alex smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Understood. But just so you know, humans are pretty good at improvising when the situation calls for it." VRYNN's expression didn't change. "Let us hope the situation does not call for it." The tour of the outpost was brief and efficient. Alex was shown the living quarters, the research labs, and the central control room, where a massive holographic display showed the status of the outpost's various systems. Everything was state-of-the-art, from the self-repairing walls to the AI-driven environmental controls. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the outpost was a house of cards, one strong gust of wind away from collapsing. That gust came sooner than anyone expected. It started with a low rumble, a vibration that Alex felt in his bones before he heard it. The holographic display flickered, and the lights dimmed. VRYNN's head snapped up, his slit pupils narrowing. "Quake," he said, his voice tight. "Everyone to your stations." The outpost's inhabitants moved with practiced precision, their movements calm but hurried. Alex followed VRYNN to the control room, where the holographic display was now flashing red. "The power grid is damaged," VRYNN said, his claws tapping rapidly on the console. "We've lost primary and backup systems. The outpost is running on emergency reserves." Alex leaned over the console, his eyes scanning the data. "How long do the reserves last?" 12 hours, VRYNN replied. "But without power, the environmental controls will fail long before that. The temperature will drop to lethal levels within 6 hours." Alex frowned. "What about the repair drones? Can't they fix the grid?" VRYNN shook his head. "The drones are designed for minor repairs, not catastrophic failures. And without power, they're useless." Alex straightened, his mind racing. "What if we bypass the damaged sections and reroute power from the secondary systems?" VRYNN's eyes narrowed. "That would require dismantling parts of the outpost's infrastructure. It's too risky." "Riskier than freezing to death?" Alex shot back. "Look, I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's better than doing nothing." VRYNN hesitated, his claws tapping a nervous rhythm on the console. Finally, he nodded. "Do it. But if you damage anything—" I know, Alex said, already moving toward the storage room. "Strict protocols." The storage room was a treasure trove of spare parts and tools, though most of them were designed for species with more limbs or different body shapes than Alex. He rummaged through the shelves, grabbing anything that looked useful: coils of wire, power converters, a handheld plasma cutter. He also found a roll of duct tape, which made him grin despite the situation. Some things, it seemed, were universal. Back in the control room, Alex set to work. He pried open a panel in the wall, revealing a tangled mass of cables and circuits. The aliens watched in silence, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Alex ignored them, focusing on the task at hand. He cut and spliced wires, rerouted power flows, and jury-rigged a makeshift bypass that would keep the essential systems running. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The lights flickered back on, and the holographic display stabilized. VRYNN let out a slow breath, his tense posture relaxing slightly. Impressive, he admitted, though his tone suggested it pained him to say it. But this is a temporary solution. We still need to repair the grid. Alex wiped his hands on his pants, leaving streaks of grease. I know, but it'll buy us some time. And maybe next time, you'll trust me a little sooner. VRYNN's expression was unreadable, but he gave a small nod. Perhaps. As the outpost's inhabitants returned to their duties, Alex lingered in the control room, staring at the holographic display. The storm outside was still raging, the wind howling like a living thing. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that Zephyria 9 had more surprises in store. And when those surprises came, he would need more than duct tape and ingenuity to survive. But for now, the outpost was safe. And that was enough. The outpost's reprieve was short-lived. The storm had passed, leaving the air thick with the scent of ozone and the ground littered with debris. But the real trouble began when the food supply was discovered to be contaminated. The storage pods, designed to preserve rations indefinitely, had been breached during the quake, exposing the carefully packaged meals to Zephyria 9's hostile environment. The result was a foul-smelling sludge that even the KRL, known for their ability to digest almost anything, refused to touch. Alex stood in the storage room, arms crossed, staring at the ruined rations. VRYNN was beside him, his scaled face a mask of frustration. This is unacceptable, the Zalaxian hissed. We cannot function without sustenance. The outpost's protocols do not account for this level of failure. Protocols don't account for a lot of things, Alex said, his tone calm but firm. But we've got options. There's edible plant life out there, and some of the smaller wildlife might be safe to eat. We just need to go out and... Out of the question, VRYNN interrupted, his tail lashing. The forests are too dangerous. We cannot risk losing personnel to predators or poisonous flora. Alex turned to face him, his expression serious. With all due respect, Director, we don't have a choice. If we don't find food, we're going to starve. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather take my chances out there than sit here and wait to die. VRYNN's slit pupils narrowed, but he didn't respond immediately. The other aliens, KRYLL and Quarians alike, had gathered in the room, their attention fixed on the human. Finally, a Quarian named Tyla stepped forward, her feathers shimmering in the dim light. Alex is right, she said, her voice melodic but firm. We cannot rely on protocols that no longer serve us. We must adapt. VRYNN's tail stopped lashing, and he let out a slow, hissing breath. Very well, but we proceed with caution. Alex, you will lead the foraging party. Tyla, you will accompany him. The rest of you, remain here and continue repairs. The forest outside the outpost was a world unto itself. The trees were tall and twisted, their trunks covered in bioluminescent moss that cast an eerie glow. The air was thick with the sounds of unseen creatures, chirps, clicks, and the occasional low growl. Alex moved cautiously, a makeshift spear in one hand and a satchel slung over his shoulder. Tyla followed close behind, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows. You've done this before, Tyla said, her tone more statement than question. Alex nodded. On Earth, yeah. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Humans have been foraging for food since before we figured out how to make fire. Tyla tilted her head, her feathers ruffling. Your species fascinates me. You are so unpredictable. Alex grinned. That's one way to put it. They found a cluster of plants with broad, fan-like leaves, and bright red berries. Alex knelt to examine them, pulling a small scanner from his satchel. "These look promising," he said, running the scanner over the berries. "No toxins, high nutritional value. We'll take as many as we can carry." Tyla watched as Alex carefully harvested the berries, her expression thoughtful. "You are not what I expected," she said after a moment. "When I heard a human was joining the outpost, I assumed you would be difficult. But you are resourceful and brave." Alex glanced up at her, his grin fading. "I'm just doing what I have to do, same as anyone else." They continued deeper into the forest, gathering more plants and setting simple traps for small game. The work was slow and methodical, but Alex's confidence seemed to put Tyla at ease. She even laughed, a soft, melodic sound, when Alex joked about the absurdity of their situation. "I never thought I'd be hunting alien rabbits on a planet that wants to kill us," he said, shaking his head. "But here we are." As the sun began to set, casting the forest in shades of purple and gold, they made their way back to the outpost. The satchel was heavy with food, and Alex felt a sense of accomplishment that he hadn't experienced in a long time. But as they approached the outpost's perimeter, a low growl stopped them in their tracks. Alex froze, his grip tightening on the spear. "Stay behind me," he whispered to Tyla. The creature emerged from the shadows, its body low to the ground and covered in thick, armored plates. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its mouth was filled with rows of jagged teeth. Alex's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Slowly," he murmured, taking a step back. "Don't make any sudden movements." The creature snarled, its muscles coiling as it prepared to pounce. Alex raised the spear, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't outrun it, and fighting it head-on was suicide. But maybe, just maybe, he could outsmart it. "Tyla," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "When I say go, run for the outpost. Don't look back." Tyla's feathers bristled, but she nodded. "Be careful, Alex." The creature lunged, and Alex shouted, "Go!" He thrust the spear toward the creature's face, not to strike but to distract. The creature snapped at the spear, giving Tyla the split second she needed to dart away. Alex followed, his legs pumping as he sprinted toward the outpost's entrance. The creature was fast, but Alex was faster. He reached the door just as the creature's claws scraped against the metal, and he slammed the control panel with his fist. The door slid shut, trapping the creature outside. Alex leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. Tyla was beside him, her feathers still ruffled. "That was too close," she said, her voice trembling. Alex managed a weak smile. "Yeah, but we made it, and we've got food. That's what matters." Back in the outpost, the foraging party's success was met with cautious optimism. The aliens watched as Alex and Tyla unpacked the food, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. Bjarwainen approached, his tail twitching. "You took a great risk," he said, his tone softer than usual. "But it seems your methods have merit." Alex nodded, too tired to argue. "We'll need to do this again. The food won't last forever." Bjarwainen hesitated, then inclined his head. "We will discuss it. For now, rest. You have earned it." As Alex made his way to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forest wasn't done with them. The creature's yellow eyes lingered in his mind, a reminder that Zephyria 9 was as unforgiving as it was beautiful. But for now they had food, and for now that was enough. The outpost's fragile equilibrium shattered without warning. It began with a low, ominous rumble that reverberated through the walls, a sound so deep it seemed to come from the planet's core. Alex was in the control room, reviewing the power grid status, when the first tremor hit. The holographic display flickered, and the lights dimmed, casting the room in an eerie half-light. He grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself, his heart pounding as the ground beneath him shifted violently. "Quake!" Verwenen's voice crackled over the comms, sharp and urgent. "All personnel, brace for impact." The tremor lasted only a few seconds, but its aftermath was catastrophic. The holographic display went dark, and the control room was plunged into near-total darkness. Alex fumbled for a handheld light, his mind racing. "Virwanen's status report," he shouted into the comms. There was a pause. Then Virwanen's voice, strained and tense. "The outpost's structural integrity has been compromised. Section C has collapsed. We have casualties." Alex's stomach dropped. "Casualties? Who?" "Two KRWL and a Quarian," Virwanen replied. "They were in Section C when it went down. We're trying to reach them, but the debris is too dense." Alex didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." The corridors were a maze of chaos. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. The air was thick with dust, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry stung Alex's nostrils. He moved quickly, his training kicking in as he navigated the debris-strewn hallways. When he reached Section C, the scene was grim. A pile of twisted metal and shattered glass blocked the entrance, and a group of aliens, Zalaxians, KRYL, and Quarians, were frantically trying to clear it. Virwanen was among them, his scales dulled by dust and his claws bloodied from digging through the rubble. He turned as Alex approached, his slit pupils narrowing. "This is beyond our capabilities," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "The debris is too heavy, and we don't have the tools to move it." Alex surveyed the scene, his mind racing. "We don't need tools," he said. "We need leverage. Help me find something long and sturdy. A beam, a pipe, anything." The aliens hesitated, but Virwanen nodded. "Do as he says." It took several minutes, but they eventually found a length of reinforced alloy that had been part of the ceiling. Alex positioned it under the largest piece of debris, using a smaller chunk of metal as a fulcrum. "On my count," he said, bracing himself. 1, 2, 3, push." The aliens joined him, their combined strength slowly lifting the debris. It was grueling work, and Alex's muscles screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. Inch by inch, the debris shifted, revealing a gap just large enough to crawl through. Alex grabbed a light and peered inside. "I see them," he called. "They're alive, but barely. We need to get them out now." The rescue was a blur of frantic activity. Alex and the aliens worked together, pulling the trapped researchers from the rubble one by one. The KRWL were unconscious but breathing, their chitinous bodies cracked and bleeding. The Quarian, a young female named Lyra, was conscious but in shock, her feathers matted with dust and blood. Alex carried her out, his arms trembling with exhaustion. Once the casualties were safely in the medical bay, Alex collapsed against a wall, his chest heaving. Virwanen approached, his expression unreadable. "You saved them," he said quietly. "If not for you, they would have died." Alex shook his head. "We saved them. This wasn't a one-person job." Virwanen's tail twitched, a rare sign of agitation. "Perhaps, but it was your idea. Your leadership. Underestimated you, Alex. For that, I apologize." Alex looked up at him, surprised. "Apology accepted. But we're not out of the woods yet. The outpost is falling apart, and we've got injured people who need more than just first aid. We need to get the life support systems back online, or we're all dead." Virwanen nodded. "What do you propose?" Alex pushed himself to his feet, his mind already working through the problem. "The main life support system is in Section D, right? If we can reroute power from the secondary systems, we might be able to get it running again. But it's going to be risky. We'll have to bypass the damaged circuits and jury-rig a temporary fix." Virwanen's slit pupils narrowed, but he didn't argue. "Do it. I will assist you." The work was painstaking and dangerous. The life support system was a labyrinth of wires, circuits, and conduits, many of which were damaged beyond repair. Alex and Virwanen worked side by side, their movements precise and deliberate. The other aliens watched in silence, their fear and hope palpable in the air. Hours passed, and the outpost grew colder. Alex's breath fogged in the air, and his fingers were numb from the cold. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Finally, with a spark and a hum, the life support system flickered to life. The temperature began to rise, and the air grew less stale. Alex leaned back, his body aching but his spirit buoyed by the small victory. "We did it," Verwennen said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You did it." Alex shook his head. "We did it. Together." The outpost was far from safe, but for the first time since the quake, there was a sense of hope. The aliens looked at Alex with newfound respect, their skepticism replaced by gratitude. Even Verwennen seemed to soften, his usual stern demeanor giving way to something almost like admiration. As Alex made his way to his quarters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had faced impossible odds and come out the other side. But he knew this was only the beginning. Zephyria 9 was a harsh and unforgiving world, and the outpost's survival was far from guaranteed. But for now they were alive, and for now that was enough.